maybe focus on other ways and try to continue to be creative. That it kind of comes back to one of the things that I like about our organization and I like about the board is it does kind of go back to what we were saying earlier about creativity, whether it's in austerity or in abundance. And what the board is trying to do right now is to put people in place so that at least my time and other board members' time can be spent on, this is the thing that we want to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another fantastic episode of The Leadership and Business Story. Today we have a very special guest on here as we are in the Papa John Entrepreneurial Center. So I want to give a shout out to them allowing us to use this space. And the special guest that I would like to talk about today is the choir director, or I guess more formally, the Associate Professor of Choral Music at the University of Northern Iowa, Dr. John Wiles. John, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, we'll start off with a story. And this is from Berkeley. It is about how music helps us be more creative. And it is by Jill Schutte. And it was published November 17th, 2017. In today's world, creative thinking is needed more than ever. Not only do many businesses seek creative minds to fill their ranks, but the kind of complex social problems we could also use a good dose of creativity. Luckily, creativity is not reserved for artists and geniuses alone. Modern science suggests that we all have cognitive capacity to come up with original ideas. Some researchers call this divergent thinking. And we can all select from a series of ideas. The one most likely to be successful, which researchers call convergent thinking. Though we may not all equally accomplish these kinds of thinking, we all can become more successful in creative problem solving. Whether the problems we face involve figuring out technical challenges at work or the next steps to take creating a new painting. The question is how. One research study shows that music as a source of creativity. Since music has been shown to improve cognition and enhance learning and memory in other studies, it makes sense that perhaps it has an impact on creative thinking. In the experiment, participants tied creativity exercises that measured divergent or convergent thinking while being exposed to silence, which was the control scenario, or classical music that evoked 4 different emotional states: happy, calm, sad, and anxious. The results suggest that listening to happy music increases performance on overall divergent thinking, cite the authors, suggesting that it enhances cognitive flexibility needed to come up with more innovative solutions, the ability to switch between different concepts and perspectives rather than seeing the problem from a rigid standpoint. The increase in divergent but not convergent thinking after listening to happy music may be explained by the fact that convergent tasks rely on less fluidity and flexibility, but on finding one correct answer, also cites the authors. It may also have to do with the mood created by happy music. After all, happiness is considered to be a positive emotion that, according to researcher Barbara Fredrickson, broadens our mindset and enhances our desire to explore and play. Though the positive mood and creativity suggest that this may be underlying mechanisms behind the benefits of happy music. Whatever the case, the results suggest that people may want to listen to music while they work, particularly if they need to come up with new ways of thinking at a more particular problem. As the authors conclude, listening may be useful to promote creative thinking in inexpensive and efficient ways in various scientific, educational, and especially organizational settings when creative thinking is needed. So that was a very wonderful little research that Jill wrote about. So, John, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not familiar with that study or with the author. But I think that on a gut level, I think most people would say, yeah, that makes sense. That's why I have specific Spotify playlists for one thing, or it's why the lo-fi thing on YouTube is so popular. I think there is something about that does make sense. The only thing that a little bit, I don't know, maybe that I bristle with is I think that oftentimes, especially in administrative areas, or whether it's a business area or whatever, a lot of times I think the word creativity is used when what people really mean is we don't have the money to do what we want to do. And so let's be creative about it. And I think that as somebody who devotes their life to music, I don't know, I think I would prefer for somebody to use the word like innovative or something rather than creative as code for austerity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Creativity is sort of kind of like that buzzword where it's like, oh, well, we need to figure out things and be more creative. You know, it kind of has like a negative connotation because, like you mentioned, not having that resources to be quote unquote creative. You can be creative with a roll of duct tape, but you can also be innovative with different types of like renewable resources.
Right. That's all very interesting, and I agree, and I think that's why we all have, like I said, our very Spotify playlists that we choose different times based on not just how we feel, but what is around us at any given time.
Right. And I don't know about you, but I know for me specifically, when I listen to specific like playlist, especially a happy one, I feel more adamant and more get up and go. And I feel like I can do more and accomplish more because of it.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true.
We covered that story. So now let's move on to you a little bit. So Dr. Wiles, John, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Arizona, in a little town outside of Phoenix, and really had a loving family and a good friend structure and community that seemed to care for me. You know, I feel really fortunate about my early childhood.
Yeah, that's wonderful. A lot of people, you know, it takes a village to grow and raise somebody. So being able to do that and then propel yourself to where you are today with those humble beginnings, I think that speaks a lot to many people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd say that we had humble beginnings. I think that we were pretty normal. You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, middle class America, and in the 80s. Yeah, I think that I was very fortunate to have family and the community and friends that I did.
Absolutely, yeah. So when did you want to start performing music, or when did you start caring for music?
Right, so I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't have music as a major part of my life. I learned to read music before I learned to read words. Probably started around age 3 or 4, the kinds of early exploration at the piano. I have an older sister who was taking piano, and my mother was our piano teacher. I think just as a little toddler, you want to be like the people around you, and it just became just a part of my life so very early. And then I think when I got into elementary school, it became something distinctive about me that the kids knew. There's always, you know, the identity that you know that you're going to have, and then there's the identity that put upon you, and how those things mingle is sometimes difficult to understand. But certainly as I went through school, I saw myself as the music kid. My friends, even those kids who weren't my friends, probably saw that as well. I was pretty serious about piano for several years. And then I got less serious about it, in that I don't think that I had the discipline to stay in the practice room as long as was necessary. So that's when my focus really began to move towards singing at that point, because as a teenager, because my perception was as a teenager that I wouldn't have to spend as much time practicing, and I would still get to do music.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of really hit hard on one of the points, that the identity that you portray and how you feel internally about it can be sort of kind of different than what other people, you know, when they look at you and they see. That's why a lot of people, you know, have those identity crises, or maybe not even that extreme, but more along the lines of like, where is my place in this world, and how does that tell about others and about myself? So, and it sort of kind of seems like at an early age, being able to read music before you can read, that's very telling that music was going to be a part of your life. You being able to latch onto that and look at your role models within your family and elsewhere, that you would be able to then become the music kid in school. And I think that's very telling about just how it implanted from the very beginning that you had the passion for music.
Right. And I think for me, when I finished college, I was a little bit sick of music at the time, and I was done with it. I think that what I was really sick of was the discipline, or at least what I perceived it to be at the time. And so I left and got out of doing music professionally and got out of doing music in education, and really just in on the area of study. And what I found is after about 3 months or so, that I would go home and start playing the piano, and suddenly, I would play for 2 or 3 hours at a time. It had nothing to do with school, and suddenly I was putting in those hours that I did not want to put in several years ago, and I realized, okay, well, this is stupid. I guess I really do want to do music, and kind of fell backwards into some graduate study, choral music, and there's been a lot of shedding of who I thought I was supposed to be, or who I thought others thought I was supposed to be. And as I've kind of tried to key in on who am I becoming and who can I be, that was a big part of it, was realizing I'm going to give up music for a while, and realizing that didn't take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I kind of mentioned on a previous podcast where we had Jacob Kurt on, he when he went to go do his job, it kind of fell out in a lot of ways, like the perception of being able to, mow people's lawns, since he ran a mowing business. It sort of kind of took away from a lot of aspects of his life. So he started to diverge a little bit into different ventures. Mm-hmm. But when he came to realize that this is like what I like to do, or at least enjoy it, absolutely, he sort of kind of had a new birth of enjoyment for it. And I think that tells a lot to your story too, about you were the music kid, and then you were like, no, I'm done. And you go off and do other things, and that's perfectly fine. And I think a lot of people need to realize that if you enjoy something, but it weighs you down to a point where it's like, oh man, I gotta wake up, I gotta do scales, and I gotta learn all these different types of things. Sometimes you do need to diverge from it.
Right. I think that it's really easy to mistake just exhaustion and project that upon something you're doing. And that maybe what was really required is a different relationship. That's what I think that I learned, was that the issue wasn't that I was sick of being a musician. The issue is that I was just simply burned out of it. And so yeah, I'm very grateful that I had those few months away, because it really did kind of solidify what I thought, this is where I'm going to invest my time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about your graduate studies. Where did you go to graduate school?
Well, I was at Baylor University, and then the University of Texas at Austin.
Do you like those programs? Were they really good? Or?
Yeah, they were great. They're so different in their approach to things. And at Baylor, I was also there for my undergrad, and so I felt pretty comfortable at Baylor, maybe more comfortable than would have been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I got to Texas, given a lot of opportunities to take some leadership early on and throughout. And so I don't know, you could call it real world experience, because I wasn't in university committee meetings or anything, but it felt like real world music making that I was involved with at the time, and that was really great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially getting those experiences within the confines of education.
Yeah.
All it is going to do is just going to grow you as a person. So especially latch on to those experiences and just learn from it, take it for the ride. So obviously we're not in Texas, we're in Iowa. So do you want to talk about maybe how you came to Iowa?
I got offered a job. After my time at Texas, I got onto the job market and kind of, it's a really competitive, a very, very competitive field. And I'm incredibly lucky to have received an interview at a few places and an offer here. And UNI was a unique situation. I was being offered a position in that I felt like that the ceiling for me was pretty high, and that there'd be a lot of opportunities for great music. I don't know if you mentioned it earlier or not, I can't recall, but one of the courses that I do is called the UNI Varsity Glee Club. And when you walk into a room and there are that many tenor-based singers involved, and you can kind of just feel the energy. At the time, of course, it's a different energy than it is now, and there was some dude in there but you could still kind of feel the residual energy of a group that was going to be special. That's something that is rare, so I feel super lucky to be offered this job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole reason how I got connected with you, is because I'm also in the Varsity Glee Club. Mm-hmm. Just the program itself is, oh my goodness, it speaks tales to what you put in is what you'll get out of it. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially that when you kind of mentioned earlier about when you were picking different jobs and trying to figure out where you could have the most creative freedom. Does that sound about right? Or?
Yeah, when people ask me about my job and things that I like, the first thing is always, the students. I love the students at UNI. But as far as the job itself, one of the things that I adore about my position here is that I have the freedom to be creative in virtually any way that I want to. Last time that we had a non-COVID semester, I believe that we did Stravinsky Mass, which is a serious piece of Western art music. And then just a few weeks later, I think that I might have wrestled a giant chicken on stage with the Christmas show. And so the ability to be creative in virtually any way that I want to, it's a huge luxury.
I think the big emphasis on that is like a diversity in experience that you yourself get to control. So
yeah, or participate in.
Participation.
Yeah.
And another thing, just having that opportunity to do it, that speaks volumes of, just not only from a job perspective, but just to grow on various different levels personally. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things that's really cool about my job is that every semester, and the Glee Club is not the best example of this because we do a lot of the same music that are standards. Every semester, my curriculum is completely different because it's new music. And so that's really an opportunity for, every single time I sit down to study a score, I get something new. And then if I do return to something that I've done before, I get to be informed by all of the other reps I have experienced, in that interval between doing those things. And I really do feel like I'm kind of the luckiest guy in the world.
Just trying to find that right space, and then from there being able to slowly take in new roles or new ideas that either come from yourself or someone else in the room with you. It's very good to learn and then be informed. So like you said, talking about a new score, you get to learn a new sheet of music. Okay, this is a perspective that I haven't seen before or heard before in your situation. How can I learn from that? And then once you learn about it, you can then share it with others. And then others get to learn about it and they share it and so on and so forth. But then once you return to it, it is very important also that you have this baseline now.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I've seen this before. How can I make it better, or how can I work upon it? Mm-hmm. I know in Glee Club, the best example that I can give is when we sing Brothers. Mm-hmm. There are some things, since I've been in Glee Club for 5 years, I can tell already that you're attacking new situations, even though it's a standard. There's definitely moments in that music where it's like, okay, well, I've heard this mistake before. We're going to touch on this now. Or I've heard this new way of how you guys performed it, and I like that, so let's keep it. But I still have this baseline of expectation.
Right. Yeah, and it's difficult to not let your previous experiences become predictive, at least in that kind of a situation. But one of the things that I have grown to appreciate is to allow the students to make their own mistakes. Even if I strongly suspect that this is a mistake that so-and-so is going to make, they deserve the opportunity to make that mistake. I think that's been an area of growth for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of, especially people in leadership roles, or when people try to bring a vision to others so that we come together in a joined vision, it's very difficult for people to be like, okay, make your own mistakes. We're on this journey together. We are going to explore the ideas of this music. We're going to explore the ideas of this project. As long as we're heading in the same direction, we're going to get there. Far too often do I see people be like, no, this is my way or the highway.
Right.
And it just brings a lot of people down. But being able to have that extra patience, and then, because I feel like a lot of people learn by making those mistakes. And if they make those mistakes and take ownership of it, well, it's just going to propel them forward towards the vision.
I agree.
So along with the Varsity Glee Club, you also have this Vox Peregrini. So do you want to maybe talk about Vox a little bit?
Sure. So this is not related to directly to the university. Vox came around in 2015. The idea really did come in many ways from my work at the university, and specifically with the Glee Club. Vox is a pilgrimage choir, and so it brings musicians from all over the country, sometimes international singers, and we will meet for one day. And for instance, in a little town south of Dublin in Ireland, we have one day rehearsals, and then put our backpacks on our backs and start walking north to Dublin. And we stop in the woods and rehearse, or we'll stop in a pub and sing a song, and we stay at bed and breakfasts. And 8 or 9 days later, we walk right into Dublin and give a concert. The idea of it, give space for musicians and those who come across us to explore music as pilgrimage, to provide a space for transformation. And it's been one of the great things in my life.
Absolutely. I was looking beforehand about this Vox thing.
Yeah.
And listening to some of the videos. Yeah. Beautiful music.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very wonderful. And not only that, but the mission and the message that, music can transform someone. It's literally a story or a journey in both the physical sense and the mental.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pilgrimage itself has been both real and metaphor for virtually all religions for thousands of years. And music is also a pilgrimage, whether it is a life in music or a particular piece of music. And so the chance to walk with that kind of double metaphor as we go along is something that has been really special to me, and I think to some other folk as well.
When you first started doing Vox and started to build it from the ground up, what kind of challenges did you face?
Well,
that's a loaded question, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we had to find people who wanted to do it. The biggest challenge. I have a good friend, and I dare say mentor in a lot of ways, named Gil Stafford. And his wife Kathy. And Gil had done Ireland with us. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I've got this idea. Would you be willing to come along? Gil said, sure. And so then I just kind of pitched the idea to my close friends who were then singers, and just said, hey, is this a silly idea, or is this for real? And what I found was that with every single person that I would go in contact, there would be something inside of them that would just say, yeah, this makes total sense. Why aren't we always doing this? And so within a few weeks or so, I was able to find enough singers to really put together a choir. And it was mostly made of folk from my life. And that was a very kind of humbling thing, because my older sister that I mentioned earlier came along. So I had somebody from when I was very young that knew me. I had some friends from college come, and so I had people who knew me in that stage of life, grad school, and then some former students that came along. So it was kind of this spectrum of folk who came along very early on. And then when we got back, I think we all kind of sat around and looked at each other and said, okay, so what's next? And of course, with pilgrimage, the real work happens after the walking is done. Organizationally, work really began to pick up then. And the next one just became about, okay, can we do this again in 2 years? At that point, when it seemed, okay, we did it again, and there were people here who were not directly tied to me. Then it became about how do we put together an organizational structure so that this can be something that can flourish and thrive as an actual thing.
Especially, when you're starting something, getting those close friends, it really is important because, it's your friends, your family that are going to be like, hey, this is a bad idea, or hey, this is a good idea. We should run with this. Why haven't we been doing this before?
Right.
So they're going to be the biggest critiques, I think, in my mind, when it comes to developing an idea.
Right.
And then not only saying, yes, that's a good idea, but also helping you sort of kind of with the first one.
Yeah.
Also speaks tellings to, you got people who are out there willing to help. You just got to reach out.
Right. And, and for me, what it also meant was that the pressure of that first one was pretty high, I felt like, because I wanted to do right by these people. And it's not that I don't want to do right by people that I don't know, but of course, it was different. And yeah, I was very, very fortunate to have the people who believed in the idea and who really, I had an idea about what Vox would be before we went on our first walk, but it wasn't until I did it with other people multiple times and reflected with my friends. It wasn't until even recently when I began to see, okay, well, this is actually the niche that Vox it has. It's really this over here. And it wasn't exactly what I thought it would be in 2015, but this is better. And having these other eyes on it is what made me see it, I think.
Absolutely. Also made it a 501c3. So can you maybe talk about how you sort of led that into that?
Yeah, so it got to the point where in 2017, when we realized we want this to be a thing. So that meant that we needed to find ways to deal with finances, and we needed to find ways to deal with, liability. And you're walking around on a mountaintop with people.
Right.
And, there's a lot of areas there. And, as it happens, I reached out to a Glee Club alum who really good at helping nonprofits and helped me figure out how to navigate that system. We put together a board of directors. The board of directors is slowly growing. We're adding people who have different skills than I do. So, for the first, up until last year or so, I was the guy who was doing all of our accounting. And I'm not an accountant.
Oh.
And, I did things as best as I could, but we found somebody who really had some skills in that area, who's able to make the reporting cleaner. And, the goal right now for our board as we continue to grow is to say, okay, well, what are our resources? Right now, the things that I am doing, we'd be better off if we got somebody who did all of the trip planning and all of the details and all of this so that I could maybe focus on other ways and try to continue to be creative. That it kind of comes back to one of the things that I like about our organization and I like about the board is it does kind of go back to what we were saying earlier about creativity, whether it's in austerity or in abundance. And what the board is trying to do right now is to put people in place so that at least my time and other board members' time can be spent on, this is the thing that we want to do. And that's a way for us to create out of a feeling of abundance rather than saying, okay, John has to do this because there's nobody else to do it. And in a lot of ways, the board has kind of slapped me on the wrist every now and then saying, John, you have to stop doing that. There are others of us here, and I'm grateful for that.
It always comes to a point in time of an organization, small or large, that one person isn't enough to do all the things.
Right.
And being able to at least be that vulnerable to be like, hey, I can't do the accounting. I need some help.
Right.
Or I can't do the marketing, or I can't do the tours. I need some help. And reaching out to people who are skilled in that area, it makes your job just so much easier. And like you said, can diverge your energy into more creative, innovative ways that can just only propel the organization.
Right. And we're still relatively small organization, but there is a bit of a, I don't know, kind of reminds me of my relationship as a parent, is that it seems like with parenting, my job is to constantly let go and to let the kids kind of continue to be who they're supposed to be and not just hold on to them. And I think that Vox can be, so far has been similar, is more that I let go and I trust other people with it, more I'm able to really key in on the thing inside of me that really started it all. And of course there's a danger in that, but I trust the people involved and I'm grateful to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you really drive the point home of kids and being able to, in a sense, a family is just an organization, just on a more deeper, intimate, personal level. I've seen in instances where kids are very micromanaged and they come out in a certain way versus kids who are, let off to both extremes, and it comes to different ways. So it's our job, both as organizational leaders, parents, brothers, friends, to really find a nice medium and to be able to be like, okay, what's the sweet spot and what's the level of engagement that we need to propel something forward?
Right. It's about flourishing. It's just creating the conditions so that it can happen. Then for me, at least, staying disciplined enough to keep looking at it.
So if you want to, you can donate to Vox.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. You can go to our website. Thanks for saying that. VoxPeregrini.com, VoxPeregrini, which means Voice of the Pilgrims. But if you were to just Google Pilgrimage Choir, I think they pop up. And, what that does is a gift to Vox will mean a scholarship to a singer. What we think that means is that when people go back into their jobs, it alters how they're able to interact with the world. I know that it's made a difference in my teaching over the past 5 or 6 years, and the other music teachers say similar things. Or you could join. There's a way there to learn how to join.
Yeah, there's an application process on there too, which, if you want to donate, if you want to participate in any way, just go ahead on VoxPeregrini.com and you can absolutely get that taken care of. So with that, I know you brought on a quote that you really liked, and I think this is a good way to just sort of sum it all up. Hope without expectation.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a quote or more of a mantra. Mm-hmm. I read that phrase once in a journal of Thomas Merton's. Thomas Merton, a Catholic monk and thinker and writer, and I became enamored with Thomas Merton in college and started reading through. His journals are published. And Merton was supposed to go to China on a visit, and as he was reflecting about his trip to China, he said, "I hope without expectation." When I stumbled across that line, it actually was right before, about a year before we did our first Vox. And so for the last 5 to 6 years, the idea of remaining hopeful, because I think that I have some tendencies towards cynicism. I think that sometimes I speak in blunt superlatives, and I can be pretty judgmental of myself. I like the idea of remaining hopeful, but at the same time, I think hope can be kind of cruel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a double-edged sword. It's like I have this ideal that I want to go and I want to get to. Then there's all the what ifs.
Right.
And it's like, well, what if I can't reach this? Or what if I don't have the resources? Or what if I can't,
Right.
And so it's a lot of like, it's good to have that goal in the far off distance. It gives you the drive.
Right. And so for me, the idea of hoping without expectation, I think there are some folk who would rightly say, no, you should have strong expectations. And of course, I have expectations for myself and my performance and my job and my relationship with my family and friends. But when I think about, so much about what my job is creating experiences for people and creating opportunities for others. And so for me to be hopeful about that, I will be able to do that without saying, and it's going to look just like this. It has given me a lot of freedom. It's really similar. My dad says, you can hold that lightly. If we're talking, well, why don't you hold that lightly for a while? And it's kind of a similar approach of just allowing myself to face something, but to not grip it so hard. It's like what Princess Leia told Grand Moff Tarkin, right? The harder he grips, the more systems will slip through his fingers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's something I think about an awful lot. And I think those are all kind of together in my mind.
I mean, my mom does a very similar thing because, I get very ambitious when it comes to projects or any sort of things that I have going on in my life. And she's like, okay, just calm down, look at the big picture. Look at the situation in a holistic perspective. And instead of just diving head first, start thinking about these things, sort of kind of like chew on the, what's the saying? Like chew on the fat a little bit. That's right.
There is something that's good about making sure that you can see things holistically so that your relationship with the work that you're doing stays healthy, and so that the time, the resources that you're putting into it are most effectively used.
Exactly, and 100% agree. John, do you got any other things you want to mention?
No, this is great. I'm so happy for you that you're doing this, and I think the world of you, and I'm honored that you would have me on a business podcast. My experience is so different, but there is certainly, to be successful in music, there's an entrepreneurial spirit that one has to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I return the same sentiments. I think the world of you.
Oh.
I think you're a wonderful role model, just not to me, but to everyone.
Oh. Oh, I see where that was going.
Yeah.
It would have been funnier though if you had just said.
Right. But with that, John, Dr. Wiles, thank you so much for joining me on today.
It's an honor, and y'all keep listening to Hunter. He's got the goods.
Oh, no, heavens forbid. But if you want to continue listening to the goods, you can make a donation to my coffee. You can go on Coffee. It's ko-fi.com/Hunter VADM. So that's Hunter, Victor Adam, Michael David. And then you can go ahead and, if you believe in the story of telling individuals, not only from a business perspective, but an organizational perspective, whether it's in music or non-for-profits, just go ahead and make that donation. It kind of helps me a lot. And with that, thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode. Hey everyone, on the next episode, we will have Hannah Butler, head of special operations for the UNI Panther Marching Band. She was a joy to talk to, and that episode is coming out on November 1st. See you then.